Well, hello, welcome. I'm glad that you're here with us today as we continue our chronological read through of the Bible. Today we're going to begin the book of Samuel. Actually, Samuel was originally a single book. When I look at my Jewish Bibles on the shelf, it just lists Samuel's, Kings, Chronicles, and so on. It's presented to us now in two volumes. Those two volumes, First and Second Samuel, those two volumes tell us about the transition of Israel from, I guess, what you'd call a tribal confederacy. It's a group of loosely amalgamated tribes, 12 of them, that live under the divine rule, or that live under divine rule of God through men that are chosen and appointed by God from time to time. Basically, now that is going to transition to a monarchy that, again, is established and supported by God, and ostensibly where the king serves as God's representative here on earth, although the kings generally fell pretty far short of that ideal. We're going to find that these three books, Samuel's, Kings, Chronicles, cover a lot of the same material. In other words, they're covering this same time period from the end of the Judges through the exile in Babylon. Although each book has its own special emphasis and details, covers its own area, it's, maybe more coverage in a certain area or so than another. Samuel's going to focus on the transition. It picks up with the last of the Judges, which would be Eli and Samuel. And it ends with King David making an offering at the location where Solomon eventually is going to build a temple. As we read, we should kind of watch for a few of these theological themes in the book of Samuel. First, prosperity and success come only from God. We can't bring it about on our own. I mean, this is true of the wicked as well as the righteous. Second theme, watch for the Spirit of God as God works through both prophets and kings. You'll see the Spirit of God coming to someone, and then God does special things through them. Especially with David, watch for foreshadowings and prophecies of Christ. You're going to see a number of those in there. Also, note that certain sins of every major character, except for maybe Samuel, but every major character has certain sins that are laid out for everyone to see, and God's grace and mercy to forgive their sin is also made clear. Note also that even though forgiven, that sin almost always results in unintended and tragic consequences. God continues to be merciful and gracious to his people, despite the sins of their leaders. And the people that have sinned are forgiven, but their sins do have consequences. The same, obviously, is true of ourselves. Note also God's propensity for working through the humble. Hannah was barren. That would be the humblest of all things for a woman. Samuel is lowly. He's a servant in the temple. Jonathan was the son of Saul, and yet God does great things through Jonathan. David is the youngest son of Jesse, one that they didn't even think to present to Samuel when Samuel comes to Jesse's house. Mephibosheth is the crippled son of Jonathan. Uriah the Hittite shows himself to be more righteous than King David. And on it goes. As we work our way through, note God's propensity, as I say, for working through the humble. All of this points to the greatest reversal, the greatest humbleness of all, when Jesus Christ rises from the death of crucifixion. One of probably the most humbling thing that one can experience. And yet Jesus Christ rises from the death of the crucifixion, and he destroys death for all and replaces it with life. Okay, so now on to the book of Samuel. As you begin your reading of Samuel, you're going to be introduced to Hannah and her husband Elkanah. They're devout, but Hannah is barren. She prays intensely at Shiloh when they bring their yearly sacrifice for a son. She's praying intensely for someone, for a child, for a son. And she promises that she'll dedicate that son to God's service as a Nazirite. Eli, the high priest, sees her and reprimands her because she appears to be drunk, but Hannah shares with Eli her prayer. And Eli tells her to go in peace, and promises that God will fulfill her request. And indeed, God does answer her prayer. Samuel is born, and once he is weaned, Hannah fulfills her vow and leaves him with Eli at the temple to serve the Lord. On a later visit for the yearly sacrifice, Eli blesses Elkanah and Hannah, and God opens Hannah's womb yet 5 more times, 3 more sons and 2 daughters. Though Eli was faithful to God, Eli's sons were not. They demanded, they extorted a portion of the sacrifice before it was even sacrificed. They were lying with the women who served at the entrance of the tabernacle. They're just described as worthless in the book of Samuel. Eli scolds them, but he never removes them from their office for their offenses. So God sends a prophet to Eli, and he tells Eli that God has rejected his household and even the household of Aaron as his priest, for Eli honors his sons more than God. The Aaronic priesthood will be replaced by a new anointed priest. Ultimately, that anointed priest is Jesus Christ. God delivers a similar message to Samuel to deliver to Eli, tell Eli that God has rejected his family as priest. Because Samuel has never heard the voice of the Lord, he twice mistakes that voice as Eli calling him. But Eli, after the second time, recognizes that it's the Lord who's calling Samuel and tells him to respond to God by telling God that he, Samuel, is listening. Of course, the next day, Eli wants to know what God told Samuel, and Samuel confirms the message that Eli had received from the prophet earlier. Eli's response is simple. He says, "He is Yahweh. May he do what he considers good." After this, Samuel continues to grow in the Lord, and everyone recognizes that he, Samuel, is a prophet of the Lord, and he continues to speak God's word in Shiloh. May God be with you, bless you as you continue to read, especially now as we enter into this new phase of our readings where we will see those things that happen as God transitions from judges to a monarchy, to kingship. I look forward to joining with you again tomorrow.